Whether you enjoy the film or not, you can't deny that The Great Race was a turning point for Thomas and Friends. It's not my favorite film of the franchise, in fact I'd go as far as to say that most of their films are pretty mediocre, but it's certainly one of the most memorable. And it's easy to see why. The Great Race is a musical. It's the first musical of the franchise. Quick context for those who don't really know Thomas and Friends. The Great Race came out in 2016 after the 19th season. Yes, 19. The earlier films did have music, but these were more of music videos interwoven throughout the movie. They were usually montages or closing songs. The Great Race was the first film to have the engines actually sing the songs from a first-person point of view, rather than a disembodied voice singing about the engines. This brings the film from a film with music to a musical. And as you can see from the title, I think The Great Race did an amazing job as their first ever musical. The film managed to nail down a really solid musical structure, which is sad because the plot of the film just holds it all back. But okay, let's step back for a moment. To understand why I say the musical numbers are so good, we first need to break down how musicals work in the first place. So, part 1, musical structure. If we want to understand the types of songs that appear in musicals, we first need to understand the concept behind musicals. So, buckle in. Okay, so why do musicals choose to include music instead of just being normal? Well, the main purpose of a music number is to convey either emotion or plot to the audience. Most times though, it's going to be emotion. You want the songs to enhance the emotional moment. There's an adage that goes, when the emotions become too strong for speech, you sing, and that's why you hear characters talking, and suddenly they're singing, and then the singing becomes more and more intense as the song goes on. That's because their emotions are getting more intense along with the song. The hope is that the songs give more weight to the emotions so that said emotions connect better with the audience. In essence, songs are just character moments or plot moments. They need to give information to the audience in a fervent manner. Songs don't exist just to exist. Every song has a purpose. And so, because stories tend to have roughly the same few story beats, you're likely to see the same few types of songs in many musicals. So let's go through a few common numbers. Number 1, the establishing number. The establishing number is the number that opens the show. It serves a few functions, but the main thing it needs to do is set context for the audience. It sets context about the world we're in, the situation at hand, or the general feel of the movie. It can also set up the fact that this movie is a musical, so that audiences have their expectations in check. Some really good establishing numbers are Belle from Beauty and the Beast and Look Down from Les Mis. Number 2, the I Want song. The I Want song is possibly the most important part of any musical. It's kind of like the backbone of a musical, where the story wouldn't function if it didn't exist. The idea of an I Want song is to be the song where the main character sits down at a tree and sings about what they want. I want this, I wish for this, I hope to become this, etc. This serves as the motivating factor that drives the character and story forward, and it makes it easier for us to root for the main character. It's no surprise that some of the most popular musical numbers are I Want songs. Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid, How Far I'll Go from Moana, and Out There from Hunchback of Notre Dame. These songs are really emotional because at its core, it's about the deepest wishes and feelings of our protagonist. Which segues nicely into number 3, the villain song. A number song which is pretty straightforward. The villain song is the song sung by the villain.
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
As a general rule, villain songs tend to be I am songs rather than I want songs. They focus more on how evil the villain is and what the villainous scheme is. You want to flesh out your villain without making them sound admirable or sympathetic. It's not impossible to have villains with clear motivations. In fact, it's becoming increasingly vital in modern movies. But writing a song about the villain's plans without the specifics of their aspirations is a good way to keep audiences rooting for the protagonist instead of the antagonist. Some good villain songs are Be Prepared from The Lion King and Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Number 4, the love song. I don't really need to go through what the love song is in detail. It's just a song where the two characters express some form of love or affection and where the chemistry between these characters can be shown. Even movies without romance can include some form of duet or love song. Love is an Open Door, Beauty and the Beast, Suddenly See More, I See the Light. There are a lot of these. Number 5, the closing number. It's pretty hard to define the closing number because closing numbers don't often have a reason to exist. There isn't any plot left to be conveyed, and the emotions of the character are often carried by the climax of the film itself. And that's why you won't often see a closing number. Remember, there isn't one template to writing a musical, because the music is supposed to serve the story. Movies often use these songs because they are common plot beats that warrant a song that can elevate the moment. A great soundtrack doesn't just outline the story, it can also bring you back into the emotions of the characters. So when you analyze a musical, don't try to fit it into various types of songs. Think to yourself, what is the purpose of the song? What are the songwriters trying to convey to me? Would this scene function identically if it didn't have the music? And so now that we're primed on how musicals work, we can look back at The Great Race. Part 2, The Great Race. So before we get into the music, let's go through the plot of the movie first. So there's a great railway show competition thingy taking place on the mainland that all the engines want to go to, and everyone is trying to convince the Fat Controller on why they should be chosen and so on. Thomas really wants to go to the railway show and tries these wacky ideas to make himself more appealing, like streamlining himself to win fastest engine or repainting himself to win best decorated engine. Later, a participant named Ashima finds herself on Sodor by accident and almost knocks Thomas into the sea. Thomas is annoyed at her, but
Other engines just because.
yeah, it's kinda weird. In one of the B-plots, Diesel has a plan to trick the Fat Controller into thinking that he is the strongest engine by disguising other Diesels as trucks. This plot will be somewhat relevant later, trust me. Back to Thomas. After being rejected by the Fat Controller twice, Thomas is really dejected and then runs into Ashima. He shares his frustrations about not being fast enough or pretty enough, and Ashima reassures him that he doesn't need to be special, he just needs to be himself. Oh, and she coincidentally brings up a shunting challenge, and Thomas thinks, oh yeah, I am really good at shunting. I should hone what I'm really good at. So the next day, Thomas wants to do shunting, but Diesel left a big heavy train in the way. Thomas wants to move it out of the way, but the other Diesels start moving on their own and get Thomas into an accident. So now Thomas needs to be repaired, and the Fat Controller, who actually wanted to bring Thomas, has to bring Percy instead. So the engines go to the Great Race. We've got Gordon for speed, Emily and James for best decorated, Henry for strength, and Percy for shunting. Nice! Back on Sodor, they notice that Gordon is missing an important piece, and Thomas is the only one who can get it there in time. So he does his mad dash, but by the time he gets to Gordon, it's too late. Gordon races and his boiler explodes, so oh no, it's up to Thomas to get a win for Sodor because everyone else lost and Percy pussied out of the shunting challenge. I already wrote that. Thomas competes, and due to some plot details, Thomas and Ashima are both crowned winners and everyone goes home happy. The end. Man, this film fucking sucks. Okay, so yeah, it's not the best film, but we're here to analyze the music, not the movie. So let's look at the individual numbers. Number 1. Will You Won't You is the establishing number. It plays after Thomas has a talk with Gordon and the Flying Scotsman about the existence of a railway show. In this song, the engines of Sodor are singing about their desires to be picked by the Fat Controller to be sent to the railway show. This number is great. It's really, really good. First of all, it establishes clearly that this railway show is a big deal to all of the engines, and that literally every one of them want to go. I'm not kidding, even the small engines, the random side characters, freaking Steven wants to go. Secondly, it very smoothly eases the audience into the fact that this movie contains music. The song technically starts from this scene here.
And with any luck, maybe you shall.
Which leads into the opening credits. Before beginning with Duck's dialogue.
It's gonna be special. It's gonna be great.
And then full out singing.
And without coaches or freight.
Please, sir, I beg you, I just have to know. Will you, won't you take me to the railway show?
The song also includes a lot of fun shots, like this, or this, or this. shots which would be the musical equivalent to a dance sequence. So, as a musical number, it slowly sets the tone of the music and also sets the context of the story for the audience. It's a great first song for the movie. Number 2. The crowd favorite. Streamlining plays when Thomas sings about his will to be streamlined so that he's able to compete in the race. And man, does this song slap! There is a good reason why everyone loves this song. In this song, Thomas sings about his wish to be streamlined, then he goes to the Steamworks to be streamlined, and he sings a bit more about being streamlined, and then his fantasy comes to an end. Streamlining is this movie's I Want song. It's literally within the first line. All I want is a bit of redefining, a slinky slicker swift the coat that's smooth and shining. Just on that alone, the song accomplishes its goal of showing us Thomas's desire to go to the show. And as the song goes on, the song gets wackier and more intense. I love that Annie and Clarabelle become Thomas's backup singers. It's an amazing touch that gives the song a lot more punch. And hey, by the end, you can actually see a crowd dancing too. It's great stuff. It's a fun earworm that makes a good I Want song. Number 3. I'm Full of Surprises is sung by Diesel as he explains about how devious he is while disguising the other engines as trucks. It's a bit hard to classify Diesel as a villain, but for simplicity's sake, we can consider his song as the villain song. I'm Full of Surprises feels exactly like Gaston, which is used to show the character of Diesel more than his scheme, and it's a really fitting villain song. It's perfectly in line with the I am instead of I want notion, and it's really just 2 minutes of fun to make a really simple scene more interesting. Number 4. In Six Small Wheels, after telling Ashima about his failed attempts to join the railway show, Ashima tells Thomas, "You don't need more than 6 small wheels. In essence, just be yourself." Thomas then has his own verse where he sings about his dismay at being his imperfect self, and the song ends with their individual melodies overlapping, Thomas disheartened while Ashima is comforting him. Six Small Wheels acts as our love song. You can argue as to whether engines can love or whatnot, but the point is, this acts as the song that bridges 2 parties together. I think it's a really lovely song. It's a really common technique to have 2 characters sing individual melodies before sharing their spotlight together. I think if not for their lack of chemistry, Thomas and Ashima's harmonizing would have actually been impactful and sweet. Regardless, it's still a really touching song, making for an excellent duet and is my favorite song from the soundtrack. Number 5. This song is one of our fun songs. While most songs need to serve a purpose, it isn't wrong to include the occasional fun song to make scenes more fun or enjoyable. In this case, this song is sung by a streamlined Gordon to the tune of Thomas's Streamlining, where he sings about the power of being streamlined. It's all fun and games until his boiler explodes and he's eliminated. I love Gordon singing. You can really feel his cockiness as he sings. The best part about this song is a connection that I'm not sure was intended by the writers. Let me explain. It's actually really smart that Gordon's racing song is a reprise of Streamlining. No, not just because he's streamlined. That's the obvious connection that the writers likely had in mind. In Streamlining, Thomas is dreaming about being streamlined because he wants all the glory. In Gordon's race, he is streamlined, but still doesn't attain the glory. There's actually a decent moral here about being your truest self, though I'm not really sure how much the writers intended that. Still, it's a pretty nice connection. Number 6. Our closing song has a ludicrously long name, and for what it's worth, it's a fine song. It's a reprise of Six Small Wheels in which Thomas, Ashima, and the other engines sing a song about the moral of being yourself. It's fine. Pretty weird because the other engines definitely didn't learn this lesson, but whatever, song exists, yada yada, movie's over. Part 3. Why songs matter. Okay, so after hearing me ramble on about the 6 songs, what is the takeaway? Well, if you've heard the songs for yourself, you can agree that they're catchy, they're fun songs to sing. But it isn't just that they're catchy, they actually serve the narrative. From introducing crucial plot points, deepening our connections with the characters, and helping us remember the overall plot. They're good songs, well interwoven into the plot, and they feel like a musical. So, why does this matter? Well, the film is pretty bad. The plot and pacing leave a lot to be desired. And while a good plot can save a bad soundtrack, unfortunately, a good soundtrack can't save a bad plot. And that's a shame, because the musical numbers of this film honestly rival those of the Disney Renaissance. I'm serious, I haven't been drawing connections with all these Disney films for no reason. I think it's clear as day to me that Oliver Davis did his homework and tried to emulate what made the Disney musicals so successful. And because these songs are so good, they've managed to stick in my mind a lot more than other bad movies like Miss the Island Rescue or Big Road Big Adventures. Really, do you remember what happens in these movies?
That's what you were told.
You will not be fearful.
You'll be brave and bold.
God, these films are bad. If I ask someone what they remembered from The Great Race, they may recall specific scenes like Thomas jumping off the bridge or the international engines arriving at the docks. But you probably can't remember the exact story. What you probably can remember are the songs, the rough contents within it, and what point of the story they take place in. And these songs are meaningful, not just because they help us remember the story, but also because they help us remember the emotions, the feelings, the relationship between the characters. And I want to tie this all back to a statement I made at the start of the video. The Great Race is revolutionary because it's the first musical of Thomas and Friends. I wholeheartedly believe that musicals were indeed the correct direction for Thomas to head towards, and I'll tell you why. Howard Ashman, the pioneer behind the Disney Renaissance, once said that animation was a much better medium for musicals. When you're already suspending your disbelief to imagine that a drawing of a crab can talk, it isn't too much more to ask that that crab also sing and now play in a band. In that same vein, Thomas, who had been in CGI for 7 years at the time of The Great Race's release, is a prime candidate for a musical. I'm not trying to say that Thomas should be jumping off the rails just because we're suspending our disbelief. Realism is still a big priority for Thomas. But I do think it's acceptable to have these musical numbers, with all its fancy colors and weird visuals, to have these numbers interspersed within a story for the purpose of enhancing the plot, the characters, and the emotions of a movie. No one is going to say your movie is unrealistic just because it's a musical. If done tastefully and for a proper reason, no one will think twice about the inclusion of a musical number. I champion the music of The Great Race because it showed potential. The same way we value films like Lost Treasure for its script and adventure, we cling on to these because these were moments when Thomas showed that it was possible to be well written, well scored, and so on. Why then, do I wonder, is there little appreciation for the music of The Great Race? Can we imagine a movie with the writing quality of Tale of the Brave, paired with the musical quality of The Great Race? That is The Lion King, Hunchback of Notre Dame, or any of these other award-winning films. Thomas has other musicals, but unlike a lot of them, this film score actually serves its narrative. It had a purpose. And that's why we remember these songs so well. The Great Race might not be a great movie, but it's certainly a great musical.